Well, it's pretty dark, but I'm out here tonight because I borrowed the valve spring compressor tool from the auto parts store. This is the standard type, big sucker. Tried using this to get that valve spring out and had a hell of a time. Uh, Finally, I was able to kind of get it to sort of work just enough so I could just kind of cheat while working with that, and also prying with a screwdriver was able to get the one of the keepers out right here. It's a little half moon shaped piece, and there was a second one, and unfortunately that either went one or two places. I'm not sure if when the valve spring compressor slipped off, I thought I heard something land in the pine needles over there. I don't have this tractor in the yard anymore. I moved it off to the wooded area near the house because I get tired of looking at it. So I don't know if it went flying over there, or the worst possibility is that it fell down. There's a hole. You can see it, but there's a hole right here where the oil drains back down into the crankcase. So I'm hoping it didn't fall in there. But I'm going to look around with the light tonight and see if I can't find it, because my worry is that if I don't find it on the ground tonight, even if it is on the ground, we are expecting snow this weekend, so that's not good. But I did get the valve out, and boy, I'll tell you, even after I got the thing undone, I had a hell of a time getting it out. You can see there's this crud. It's actually coming off with my fingers now, but it was pretty much jammed in there with that. So into the valve guide and down in that whole port, it looks pretty nasty. And from this side, with the manifold off, you can see the corrosion in the ports. So I might put a little wire wheel attachment on a Dremel tool and see if I can't clean those ports up a little bit while I've got this open. That's all I could do out here tonight, other than go on a bit of a hunt for that other keeper. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. Well, in this case, my kingdom for a keeper. I'm at a stalemate here on this old engine, this Hercules engine, because I lost one of the two keepers for this intake valve that I pulled and cleaned because it was sticking. And that's basically what's holding me up and putting this thing back together. I've got the new head gasket in. So, searched high and low. I was able to find a guy who had new old stock valves, but no keepers. So, I don't need valves, just need a keeper. And I've tried finding keepers the right size, and I keep striking out. First thing about this keeper is this is what's called a 0 degree keeper. In other words, if you look at it on its side, it basically looks like a washer that's been cut in half. So it's flat on both sides. It has no beveled edge to it. Typically, keepers have that bevel to it at a particular degree of angle, and that's what denotes this as a 0 degree, because it has no beveled angle on it. It's just a flat little sucker. So a lot of motorcycles don't use these. Most automobile engines, modern engines, don't use them. I mean, I've never seen them. I can't remember the last time I've seen these kind of keepers. So I think they were probably on a small engine like a lawnmower engine or something like that. And even a lot of those that I take apart, the keepers aren't flat necessarily. So I'm kind of striking out. So I'm actually toying with the idea of actually making a keeper. I have this half, and I have the valve, so I can get dimensions off this. The Continental N62 engine that I've got to eventually restore, that actually uses this style of keeper. So I actually took keepers from that one to see if they would work, and they don't. And when I held the two valves up against each other, I found out that this part of the valve stem on the N62 valves is thicker, even though the valves aren't any bigger. But that part of the stem is thicker, so that's why they won't work. So I just checked, and I've got a drill bit that's a perfect fit for that ID. And so what I'm thinking is, if I can figure out, based on this half circle here, what my OD was, maybe I could find some stock and actually cut a keeper out of it. I mean, it would be tricky as hell to do because it's such a tiny thing. But the other possibility, I do have one more place I can check. I've got an old lawnmower engine that is sitting out in the barn somewhere. If I can go drag that thing out, I don't know why I never threw it out after all these years, but if it's still kicking around, I might check out and see what that's got on it for keepers. Okay, decided to go back to work on the Yelm Earthmaster. This is the old parts tractor that I bought. It's got a Hercules engine, which isn't original to it, and I wanted to get the motor running just to see, you know, how things ran, whatever, and got all involved in a project I probably shouldn't have wasted time with, but anyways, here we are. So I've got a new head gasket for it, and my last hang-up was that I had lost one of the valve keepers. I came up with a fix for that, or actually my neighbor did. I'll get to that in a moment. But right now, since it's been sitting for a few months since I last played with it, I did have the tractor covered, but just from condensation, we've got some flash rust on the cylinders, which is not that unusual considering. So what I want to do is, this is just really minor stuff. I don't want to be overly aggressive with it. So I'm going to clean that off of the cylinder walls and chisel off this old head gasket, and then I'll use the shop vac to get all of that debris out of there. There's not really much in there. A couple pine needles fell in when I was just pulling off the covers and everything. And then we'll take a look at how well that valve guide is in this one that was stuck pretty bad. Well, back to work on the Earthmaster. I had to quit because of the rain. Took some finagling, but I was able to jury rig up a way to get this in-head valve type valve spring compressor to work on this type of a deal here. So I've got it all pulled up. I've got the valve all cleaned up and reinserted. I've already got this cup type deal here is already on there, and that's what I've got the valve spring compressor is pulling up on. So now I can see the keyed area there on the valve stem. And of course my problem was that one of the keepers ended up went flying when this slipped off, and the spring basically sent it flying. So my problem was I couldn't find one anywhere, and you can see the original one there on the left, and what I've got there on the right is something that my machinist neighbor made up for me out of a little piece of hardened steel of something, I don't know what, but he basically made that up. You can see it's not a perfect match by any means, but we did a test run and it actually fits in the groove nicely. And what actually happens here is when the valve spring is released, that metal part right here that you can't see because I've got the spring compressor obscuring it now, but this metal part right here, this collar comes down and actually covers the outside edges of these two keepers, and that's what actually keeps them captive. So that's why we think this is actually going to work, even though it's not the right fit. And I searched high and low to try and find the right keepers for this thing, and every time I did find a keeper that had a 0 degree on it, which is what they pretty much call this type of keeper, they were the wrong diameter for the valve stem. So anyways, before I could put the keepers on, I've got to put this little cap deal on I forgot to put on, so this gets a little tricky. I've got to get that valve up, get the cap in there, and then let the valve back down. So I've got to release the tension and take this little piece off of here and reset it. Okay, now I've got that little cup in there, so now I can reinsert the valve. Take a little bit of jiggling, but I want to get it to fall into that cup. Okay, so now it's the end of the valve stem is in the cup. I've got the valve closed, so now I'm going to reset my jury-rigged valve spring compressor setup. Now this is where things get a little dicey. I've compressed the valve spring as far as I can with this valve spring compressor because it's now starting to hit the underside of the casting there, and I've got just enough room there to probably slip those two keepers in. Now where it gets tricky is I've got to slip them in very carefully. I don't want them to fall out because I could lose one down this oil passage. So actually I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to block that passage with something, a little piece of rag, before I start this. And then of course the other thing is if this slips off and that violently snaps down, it's going to send that keeper flying, and I'll probably lose it like I lost the other one. So for starters, I'm going to block this hole right here, which is the oil return galley. Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but I've now got the two halves of the keeper in there, and now I've got to very easily and slowly release the clamp pressure. And what that'll do is hopefully that cup will just slide right over those keepers and keep them in place. Success. Alright, now time to install my new head gasket. Got a head gasket from a guy out in Ohio who he's kind of, I guess, known through the different message boards as the Hercules engine guy. I guess he's got a huge inventory of I guess it's new old stock Hercules stuff. Didn't have my keepers, but he had a head gasket, so I was able to get that. So let's install that head. Okay, the fellow in Ohio is the company name is Hercano, Hercano Propulsion LLC of Ohio. I think it's Newark, Ohio. Anyways, if you need Hercules engine parts, that's your guy on a lot of stuff. So yeah, definitely must be new old stock. Here's the gasket. We're going to open it up and hope it's a good fit in a second, but you notice right on here it says manufacturing date 8 of 62. So from Hercules Motors Corp of Canton, Ohio. So I wonder if that's close to where this guy was. I wonder if he just like went down to the factory and bought out what was left. So far so good. Looks like a good match. It's clearly marked this side up, which is nice. For those of you wondering what it cost, it was $35 for this gasket, and then $10 to ship it, for a total of $45, which is pretty reasonable considering you just can't get them. From what I understand, it's pretty tough to get these head gaskets. Time to wrestle that head back into place. Well, here's a good enough place to quit as any, because I need to get some torque specs for these nuts, and if I can't find specs that I like for these Hercules engines, then I'm probably just going to cheat and use the specs for a Continental N62 engine, just because it's a very similar little motor, but hopefully I can find the actual specs. And then also I want to see if I can track down any other gaskets here. There's a Victor number right on here, 13041, on this little gasket right here, which there's pretty much, looks like they're a mirror image pair. So I think if you just flip this one over, it's going to be the same as that one. Yeah, it looks about right. So see if I can get those, which should be nice. If not, I'll probably just use some high temperature RTV on them. And then the rocker arm cover, not rocker arm cover, what am I saying? The lifter cover here. This gasket's damaged right here when I was dealing with that darn valve spring compressor. I damaged that one, so I can't reuse that one even if I wanted to. And I'd much rather get a new one if I can, so see what I can track down there. You can see right here, there's a, it's kind of funny, the light, when I put my hand in there, the camera gets crazy. Anyways, you can see just above where I was working is that little section there, chunk taken out. So that's all for now.